All right, let's do this review. It's a screenwriter's take on Deadpool and Wolverine. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 14. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Um, a lot of people are talking about this movie. Um, they're saying it's good. They're saying it's great. What's the deal? Well, in my opinion, it's good. It's totally good. Totally worth watching. If you're a MCU guy and you've mostly kept up, um, I took my squeeze to go see it, and she liked it. Now, she knew some of the Marvel MCU, but she didn't know it all. But she enjoyed the movie. It's a fun movie. And some people are saying, well, it doesn't really fix the MCU, blah, blah, blah. Look, it's not just the MCU that's in trouble. Movies are in trouble. Ryan Reynolds understands fan service. If he understands one thing, he understands fan service. And that has been sorely lacking in many movies. You'll notice that Ryan Reynolds has never come out and said something like, oh, if you don't like this movie, go F yourself. Neither, I don't think Hugh Jackman has said anything, although I think he said one political thing maybe, but they're both pretty much just into entertaining us. And that is the first thing. If you don't have guys who are entertainers who are interested in doing anything than entertaining first, they're useless. They're useless because whatever the other thing is going to get more attention and it's going to bomb. It's going to be terrible. It might be watchable, but it's probably not going to be a good movie. The reason this is a good movie is it's there to entertain you. Now, some complain there are too many Memberberries. Well, there are. There are a lot of Memberberries, as they say. There are a lot of scenes that are dependent upon some amount of knowledge of the MCU, even the Disney Plus stuff. But you know what? They explain just enough, and it's also a comedy, so it works. It works. By the way, this is my non-spoiler review. One of the cameos in particular I'm going to talk about later. It's spot on. It's really spot on and very satisfying. It was needed. Some of the other cameos, not so good. They're fine. I mean, they're not bad. They're just like I didn't need to see that. One of the great things that they've, at least I guess they allowed Reynolds to do, is make fun of Fox and Disney, breaking the fourth wall in a way that makes sense. Because the attitude you need to take when you do something like that is you're a rich a-hole. You're making fun of other rich a-holes. You're not making fun of the fans. The fans are, if you make fun of them, you're toast. You're toast. Unless you're doing it in a fun way. Maybe you can get away with a fun little jab. But that's not what's needed now. What's needed now is they're making fun of Fox and they're making fun of Disney. And it was great. Every second of that was great and satisfying. It's a relief to see that. To see that one person in Hollywood has a sense of humor about his situation. And it speaks to the truth of the situation. Which is, yeah, Ryan Reynolds is rich and Disney and Fox are effing around with these characters. The plot of the movie addresses that. It doesn't just put Memberberries in. The plot of the movie explains, well, why you've got all these disparate characters. It actually explains the TVA in a way that kind of makes sense. Now, some of it is a bit convoluted, but it's fine. It's understandable. The villain is personalized. She wasn't made to be a girl boss because of her girl bossiness, let's say. She was the villain because she was just super powerful. And it wasn't a screed about feminism or anything like that. Nothing like that happened. The only thing that worried me in the trailer, and I think they showed a little too much of this in the trailer when I saw it. Looking back on this, I think the trailer needed more action and less of what they showed. What they showed a lot of is the wind-up, which is all in the beginning, where Deadpool is, he's lost his girlfriend. He's a used car salesman. Yeah, there was a little too much of that in the trailer. I kind of get why they showed that, because none of that gave away what was to come. But I think they could have shown a little less of that. That would be my, looking back on it, my criticism of the trailer. I felt a little, looking at the movie, I feel a little misled in a way that almost made me go, I don't know if maybe I'll wait for this movie. But of course, the word of mouth is fantastic. The nerds are loving this thing. My friend, who is a harsh critic of this, but a huge comic fan, he called me up and just said, "You have to see it. You have to see it. You absolutely have to see this. Oh, it was great. Oh, the cameos. You have to see it. I'm not going to say a word about it, but you have to see this. You have to see this." And I have to call him tomorrow, and we have to talk about it. And that's because that's what we do. We talk about movies. Now, my movie friends, my hardcore movie friends, like my snobby cinema friends, they wouldn't like this movie. They're in the comics, but not super in. This is a more of a blue-collar sort of sensibilities for the movies, because there's a lot of cursing, a lot of violence. It's over the top. Everything's over the top. If you're going to lean into this Memberberries and multiverse stuff, and it's going to be a comedy, lean into it hard. Like hard. Make the whole movie nothing but that. And that's exactly what it did. And when you lean into it that hard, it forces you to explain enough of it that you get it. So even if you don't know the various characters that made cameos in this, you sort of start to get it in the context of the film. Where they explain, like, the disparate characters that we don't know what to do with get thrown into the void if you don't cooperate with the TVA. So that explained everything. It explained it enough for the people who knew these characters, and enough for my girlfriend who didn't know these characters all that well, who doesn't really read that enough comics that she would have been steeped in the lore that she would have recognized everything. And they didn't fill the screen with Easter eggs constantly. There was a good little one with the Fantastic Car. I enjoyed that. And a couple other little items, but mostly it was just fun. What was in the movie was meant to be fun. It didn't matter that there were these long scenes where clearly the villain was going to do something and they should have been right behind her, but instead there's this other long fight scene that was probably completely unnecessary but pretty hilarious. That was entertaining. It was entertaining to watch. People came out of the theater pumped, and that's the important thing. Did the plot make any sense? It made enough sense. It set up the physics of its own universe and stuck to that. It stuck to it pretty good. Unlike, say, She-Hulk, which tried to do that and failed, breaking the fourth wall and things like that. Or some of the other multiverse stuff that just got bogged down in a bunch of nonsense. The comedy really helps. The comedy really helped make this fun, because it moves things along. It makes it way more entertaining. Hugh Jackman is a total straight man in the movie. The Wolverine is a straight man to the wacky Deadpool. And they tee up Hugh Jackman in such a way that it just works. It just works. So, I would see it. Now, if you're not again, I mean, if you're not super steeped in the lore, you'll be fine. Because it's Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. It's Ryan Reynolds unleashed, saying and doing crazy stuff throughout the movie. Just blah, 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 blah. And it's great. And, I mean, you just need to know the basics of Wolverine and Deadpool, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. That they can regenerate, which they do constantly through the movie because they're constantly getting hurt. You know, they don't even bother to go through that, which is another good piece, too. You just see it. So even if you go into it not knowing the characters can regenerate, they're breaking bones left and right, and, well, Deadpool is. And, they, you know, they're coming back together, and they're just getting up. They're getting stabbed, and, yeah, it just doesn't matter because they just keep regenerating and regenerating. So, and they had a very interesting post-credit kind of thing during the credits, which was interesting. And then they had one at the very end, which was very strange, which I didn't quite get, but I sort of did. I guess it was a legit thing. I don't know if the last scene was meant to be fake and just a joke, or if it was meant to be legit and a joke. But highly worth it as well. I won't spoil anything else in this non-spoiler review. So yes, I would totally recommend. This is the summer movie. It's going to do $1 billion. Oh yeah, this is on its way to an easy billion. Probably one of the MCU's. Probably I don't know. What are the grosses? I don't know. I don't think it'll be at the top, but it's it may be the top grossing R-rated movie. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what other movies are in the mix on that. I'd have to do some research. But we'll talk about this tomorrow in the live stream. All right, that concludes my non-spoiler review. So, spoilers ahoy. I'm going to ruin everything now. So if you plan on seeing this, go see it. If you've already seen it, then you can hear my various spoilers. All right, we're going to break it down, as always, 3 acts. So first act. First act would be my only criticism of the movie. It's a little long, but it's a setup that Deadpool's life has gone awry. He's essentially... He claims to be happy, but he doesn't seem happy in the first act. You know, he's trying not to be Deadpool anymore. I thought they sort of cucked him a little bit, but I guess that was going to be part of the movie. They wanted to make him a loser again so he could be a winner by the end, which is fine. It's a good character journey. Yeah, at first I was not too happy about that, but watching the movie, yeah, it worked. It worked. So, you know, I was a little upset that, you know, him and Vanessa broke up, but I didn't really see it going down that way, but I can accept it now. I'm cool with it now. You know, and again, they showed a lot of that party in the trailer in the beginning. It's fine. I think the rest of the stuff was more of the movie. I mean, that stuff happens, but then it's over. Like, it was only about 10 minutes of it, really. But it felt a little long. It felt slow. A little bit. I'm not knocking the movie. I'm just saying, like, I could have done with maybe, like, 2 minutes less of that. Or just, like, him not so depressed. He's in so low energy. So, of course, he's kidnapped by the TVA, and I hate the TVA, but in this movie, they didn't do the worst job with it. It's still a bad concept, but then again, Deadpool's not a strong comic book character. He's okay. He's a bit derivative, but Ryan Reynolds really does a lot with him. It's kind of like Tom Hardy playing Bane. Like, I don't like Bane as a character, but Tom Hardy's Bane is pretty damn good. So, yeah, so once we get into Deadpool in his, now they start out with action, which is fantastic. Again, Ryan Reynolds you got to get to entertaining the audience right out the gate. So it starts with that opening fight scene, and then flashes back, and we see all this stuff about Deadpool. Second act, we're back to where we started after the fight. Deadpool is trying to find his Wolverine to replace his Wolverine, and finally finds the worst Wolverine in the multiverse. So he picks up him, and great joke in the film is they're going to make you do this until you're 90. And it sure seems that way. So he brings him to the TVA. The TVA says, no, this isn't going to work, and they send him to the Void. In the Void, of course, we get introduced to Cassandra Nova, who's the main villain, and she is super powerful. We, of course, get the first great cameo by Chris Evans, who they think is Captain America in a great setup, but it's actually, of course, Johnny Storm. It's Chris Evans as Johnny Storm because he played Johnny Storm in one of the Fantastic Four movies. And they don't bother to explain much. You either are steeped in the comic book lore or you're not. And the movie lore at this point. So they do that. And so it's a great scene where, of course, Cassandra just murders Johnny, thanks to Deadpool. And then they escape. And then there's the team up. And again, you could argue this is all Memberberries, but the team up is, of course, with the forgotten characters. Elektra. There was rumors Ben Affleck would be in the movie. But instead, they kind of diss him in the movie. And then, so it's Elektra. And then there's Blade, who's amazing. Well, I told you, and I feel very vindicated by the whole movie. So take my review with a grain of salt, because the moment I saw Blade, I said, yes, this is the Blade I wanted to see. This is why I've kept saying Wesley can still play Blade. And he certainly showed it in this movie. Then you got Channing Tatum as Gambit, which, did he actually play Gambit in the movie? Or was that just a rumor? I can't remember. And who was the fourth guy? God, I already forgot. Oh, and it was Daughter Wolverine or Girl Wolverine or whatever. So that was a nice mix of characters from forgotten movies, along with Toad and Pyro and I think there was one other I may have missed. But, yeah, it was just enough. And they had, and Juggernaut was in it. So, they had just enough there to, get the MacGuffin. And so they had a big fight scene. Awesome. And then eventually, they managed to get back to stop the Time Ripper. But, of course, in the process, Cassandra follows them. And then we get into the third act. And then the third act is Cassandra's going to destroy the world using the Time Ripper. And then Wade and Logan have to fight their way through 100 Deadpools in order to stop her, which they eventually do. And they had these great moments where, the Mr. Paradox sets him up and says, if you do this, you'll be obliterated, every atom, you'll be dead. And then, he's basically lying through his teeth to the other TVA officer, saying that it wasn't his fault and that he lost good men trying to stop Cassandra Nova and that he was their friend and the whole thing. And, of course, they just show up and they're fine. The only thing that I would call a Memberberry is when they go to eat shawarma, which is a callback to the end of the first Avengers movie. But, yeah, and so in the end they win. Logan walks off into the sunset, but then, what's the name? Deadpool introduces them to all his friends, and, they have a big party and they're all good. Everything's back to normal, and then it's nice to imply that maybe Wade gets back with Vanessa. I think I would have liked to seen her kiss him at the end, but I thought it was okay. It kind of uncucked him at the end there. Satisfying, entertaining, lots of great fight scenes, tons of fight scenes. I like that Wolverine and Deadpool got on each other's nerves and fought. Was it twice? They had two big fights, I think, maybe three. So good stuff, good stuff. And Jackman just played it straight the whole time, and he really sold me on the Wolverine that wanted to die. And in the end, he finally pulls out of the dive, and it's all good. It's all good. So, will this save the MCU? I mean, I don't know what their plans are. I guess their plans could be to bring back Jackman yet again as playing Wolverine. I mean, he still looks good in Wolverine. He still could do it. I don't see why not. He could just be a slightly older Wolverine. Maybe then they would drop the love triangle, or maybe they would just start the X-Men characters, make them all a little older. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to recast them or not. Feels like they could do more X-Men movies, especially if they did push it a little further downstream and didn't bother to start all over again. Maybe that's what they're planning to do. It seems foolish to me to start completely over, but who knows what Disney wants to do. I mean, or maybe Wolverine will just make an appearance and he'll barely be in it. Who knows? It was interesting that they showed a highlight reel of behind the scenes with a bunch of the actors, from the old X-Men movies. It seemed like a farewell letter to that era of X-Men, and especially Hugh Jackman. So maybe this is the end for him. Maybe this is going to be the last movie. And hey, this would be a good movie to go out on too. I mean, Logan was, but this would be a good one to go out on. It's certainly, but then again, I mean, what are you going to do when they drive the money truck to your house? Say no? When you looked at the old footage, he did look very young in the role. But now I think he looks more like Wolverine than ever. So, I don't know. I'm sure he's getting sick of it, but he's an Australian. The Australian actors, man, they'll keep playing it. Chris Hemsworth will do Thor until he's 80. He'd do Wolverine until he was 90. I'm sure Margot Robbie would have kept doing Harley Quinn. They're workhorses. They understand the value of work, I think. Whereas I think the American actors are like, oh, I'm tired of this. Although Ryan Reynolds, again, he can keep playing Deadpool. He's in the suit. With that suit, they could CGI a bunch of the stuff, and they throw a stuntman in there. He just has to do the voice. That's all he has to do. Why wouldn't he keep doing it? It's why they should have kept, RDJ, or RJD, Robert Downey Jr., RDJ as Iron Man, because, when he's doing all the fighting, he's in a suit. Jackman's the one who's got to stay in shape. The other guys, I mean, they got to stay in a bit of shape, but you always have the stuntman in the suit. And even with Jackman, they put now they're gonna have the Wolverine mask on him. It looked great in that. And finally, so a lot of satisfying things, a lot of fan service. Some people are complaining about the plot, but again, you can get away with a very ramshackle plot if you're doing a comedy, and this is mostly a comedy. Was Wolverine gonna die? No. Was Deadpool gonna die? Absolutely not. I mean, maybe Wolverine would have died, but doubtful. That would have not been a satisfying ending. I feel like the movie was relatively tight. And the fight scene with Blade, Gambit, Elektra, Wolverine, and X-23, and Deadpool, That was all great. That was the best fight scene in the movie because we get to see. I mean, I didn't really care about Elektra. Channing Tatum was okay, but to see Wesley Snipes do the Blade thing again, I mean, he looked great. He looked just like Blade. They gave him a little gray. I mean, that's what they could have done for a movie. He's the Daywalker. He's part vampire. He could do it until he can't walk. I mean, if Jackman can still do Wolverine after all this time, why can't Wesley Snipes still do Blade? It would be another billion-dollar success story. And you could even have it tie into this movie. And in fact, they kind of made allusions to that. At the end, he asked the TVA to, help out the friends. Maybe they're going to bring them all back. I don't know. The TVA was kind of lame. The TVA is lame. I mean, there's no way to get around it. It's just a lame concept. I hate the officers, and it just suddenly turns into a cop show and a bunch of pseudo military guys. I mean, nothing made me happier than to see Deadpool kill a million of those guys. He could have killed them all. That to me would have been the greatest ending. Deadpool kills everybody in the TVA and it doesn't exist anymore. That would have been awesome. But unfortunately, they're keeping it around. So, I mean, that's where they sort of scored their woke points because, it was an evil white man who started this whole thing, and, it was a strong, empowered black woman who is fixes it at the end with the TVA. The TVA is just dumb. The whole concept's dumb. I think they should drop it, but whatever. I was willing to tolerate it, I guess, to be entertained. That all being said, going forward, I really hope they drop the TVA. I hope they just quietly retire it. Maybe it's in the background, but mostly, maybe, they just announced, by the way, if you haven't heard, huge spoiler, Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Doctor Doom. And I'm not sure how they're going to roll that out, but it's going to have something to do with the multiverse, I think. Or maybe not, but they're also doing Secret Wars, which definitely has to have a little bit of that aspect. So maybe you could have a situation where Doctor Doom, murders all the TVA guys, and then finally we're rid of that, but who knows? Who knows? But what I do know is I paid $14 for this freaking movie. And I didn't feel like I got ripped off. I felt I got entertained. So the jokes were solid. And, the stunts were good. The cameos were nice. Everybody got to do a thing. And the effects were really cool. One of the coolest things in the movie was Cassandra Nova reaching into people's brains and, moving her hand around inside their heads. That was really good. That was a good use of the special effects in such a way that, I could get behind that. And it looked good, too. It looked really good. The movie looked good. It was a spectacular. It was an amusement ride, but it was a good one. By the way, Blake Lively as Lady Deadpool was funny. I enjoyed that, reading that in the credits. And Peter had a good scene. And the Happy Hogan scene was another scene I was like, it's okay. But again, that was part of the wind-up that probably could have been a little shorter. But overall, I would give it an A. I wouldn't give it an A+, but I'd give it an A. Yeah, definitely should see this movie if you have any interest in the MCU. If you don't, and you're just looking for a comedy movie, I mean, what other comedy movies are out there? I found it funny. But then again, I am a comic book guy, and I knew all this stuff. But my girlfriend, she knew some. She knew enough. She saw some of the MCU movies, so. But, so I think normies can enjoy it, at least on a superficial level, if you enjoy the action. The action was really good. And the jokes are just, they're not super dependent on what's going on. They're more dependent on the fourth wall breaking when, like, he makes fun of Disney and Fox. So, if you don't know that lore, you might be a little lost for a couple of the jokes. But I think overall, you'd get it. And the movie just moves so well. You'll be fine. We went to an 8 o'clock show, half hour of freaking commercials and trailers, as always. But the movie let out at 10:30. So it was a I won't say a tight 2 hours, but it was 2 hours. It could have been a little slightly tighter. Could have shaved off maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but overall, very satisfied. I enjoyed my Memberberries. So I would say check out Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a spectacular enough that you'd want to see it on the big screen. I was in the front row, unfortunately, so a little too much of a big screen for me, but fortunately those stupid reclining chairs they introduced in every movie theater actually works for the front row, because you can go. I had to recline all the way back, and then I could see. But yeah, so Deadpool and Wolverine, and that's my review. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. And don't forget, the live stream is at 7 o'clock. We can talk about this as well, and box office. See you on the live stream where we do it live.